Greetings. Welcome to Powered by Nyame. I'm your guide and host, Grace Kunadu. We had a little hiatus. Welcome back, and I'm glad to see you all here once more. This week, our focus will be on fear. I want to start with a story. There's a movie that I watched recently. I think it's called It, and it's about a spirit or a clown, a form of a clown that lives off of fear. And in this movie, which I think took place somewhere in Maine, that is in the furthest northeast coast of the United States, in a small town. And I will say the backstory of the movie, but the point I want to share with you is this. You see, this particular spiritual force or being in the form or shape of a clown literally fed off of fear. Meaning that it would devour, that is, consume small children, sometimes big children, that is, teenagers. Rarely did I see any adults, but it would devour these small children to teenagers that feared this particular clown or spirit. And however, when it came to those children and teenagers that did not fear this spirit in the form of a clown, the best that the spiritual clown would do was place that child or those children in some form of suspended animation, that it would simply hypnotize them and freeze them, but it could not devour them, right? And what's more is that once a number of these small children realized that A, the clown lived on fear. B, once the small group of them did not have fear and acted in unison, that is, worked together and did not separate in their quest to get rid of, defeat this spirit in the form of a clown, they would be victorious, at least for that moment. Now, the import or the relevance of that story is this. You see, fear, it is something that makes the world go round. Fear is what drives this world. Let's start with parents, right? Children are afraid and fear, right? To some degree greater for most than others. Fear their parents, fear their guardians, fear their caretakers, fear the adults in their lives. From very young, small children, toddlers, all the way up. Fear, it is the filament that makes the light switch or the light bulb of this world works. In other words, it is the conductor for making everything in this world moves, right? We fear losing our jobs. We fear losing our position. We fear losing our status. We fear losing people that we think love us. We fear losing friends. We fear losing in sports. We fear. Fear drives and lubricates this world in which we live in, the worlds in which we live in. And guess what? Because of that, spiritual entities, whether figures, forces, or beings, particularly of the negative or destructive kind, feed, like that clown in the movie It, off of fear. Your fear, my fear. Whatever it is, it will seek out and find the thing in which you fear. And that's precisely what happened in this movie. That is, the clown form that the spirit embodied would in fact figure out what is the greatest fear within each child. And it would actually take on the shape sometimes or the form or even the manifestation of that fear to get at that child or those children. Those, again, that could not stand on their own and repel the fear, that is to face their fear, and we'll come back to the facing fear in a moment, they would be literally devoured. That is, these very nasty, bloody teeth would come and literally devour that child, and that child will be history, right? Now, fear is something that is in us, right? We all have felt afraid or scared or had fear at some point, many points in our lives. So fear is somewhat natural, right? But fear can be debilitating. Fear can easily numb us. Fear can easily lead us to an early grave. Fear, right, can take us out of our path. Fear can take us out of our destiny. Now I come back to destiny as well. So I have two check marks. One is for destiny, one is for how to confront fear, right? But fear permeates everything that we do in our lives. It permeates religion. For example, there is the notion, whether it is Islam, Christianity, or all the forms of so-called organized religions, or even spiritual organization or spirituality in general, there is a sense of fear. We fear ancestral beings and forces. We fear apparitions, ghosts, spirits in general, right? We fear God. We fear this creative force, right? There's a thing of fear, right? In the Akan Tree language, there is a phrase and a Dinka symbol, and as well as a proverb with the idea of Je Nyame or Jenyame. And some people translate that as being simply accept God or accept this creative force. I see it as Je as to receive, right? But there's a sense that, you know, everything may fall apart except God or the Creator, right? Everything can be feared except, right? But there's also the notion of fear, right? That you want you to have a fear of God, right? And so this notion of fear, when it comes to religion or spirituality, is of a different kind, because the notion of fearing this creative force, supreme being, whatever it is you want to label it, is more of a reverence or deference. That is, the fear is not to be afraid of. The fear is more of a respect and a reverence for, right? In the same way that one may have a healthy fear of their parents, in the sense that they respect their parents and will not behave in certain manners that would bring out a certain kind of disrespect upon the name and upon the persons of the parent or parents that are involved, right? And by healthy, I mean it's not a terrifying fear, as in the case of the clown in the movie. It is a fear of deference, respect, and almost having a sense of that there's someone that is above me, that I need to have a certain regard for. And so there's a sense of a healthy fear, right? And of course, the rules that they create, which we live under as children amongst our parents and guardians and caretakers. But I'm speaking also of another kind of fear, right? And this fear is about our destinies, right? But first, let me clarify what I mean by destiny. By destiny, my sense, my idea, at least from my experience, I've come to know destiny. Destiny is not simply a plan that is all mapped out that one has to go through in a particular way. My view of destiny is very simple. And in a moment, I'll tell you how fear bleeds into destiny. My view is very simple, that destiny is more of a destination. It's a coordinate that whatever or however you get to it, you get to it. But destinies along the way can be rerouted. One can lose their way. One can never find their way back, right? But they'll meet that point, right? So they can get through all kinds of ins and outs. They can have ebbs and flows. You can have those same kinds of experiences, ups and downs, highs and lows, traumas, troubles, you name it, along the way. But there is a point that you will get to, however you get there. That's my view of destiny, right? Not this well planned out, specific design that you have to go through each particular part to get to a certain point. That said, fear drives and sometimes is necessary for our destinies, right? We fear living and being ourselves. Why do we fear? Because we are afraid of what others may think of us when we live out our lives according to that coordinate, that point, that destiny. And we know it and we feel it. There are times in our lives where we may say to ourselves or say to others, if we're bold enough, that, I just don't feel like, doing that. Or I just don't feel like, being a part of that. No, I'm not really feeling this crowd over here. But we'll still go along with it, right? Because we fear the judgment, expectation, and the power of isolation, and ostracization from others that we may want to belong to, or we related to, or we have a certain affinity towards. Fear, right, drives our destiny and is necessary. Because just like that movie, that fear consumes many of us. And so we almost sometimes do not get to that coordinate, that point, that destiny that was laid out for us because of the fear that devours us. And that fear devours us because we don't confront it. And so here's a simple way to confront fear. Accept it. It's that simple. That is, whatever it is that you fear, accept that you fear it, and then you can work out something towards it. I'll give you 3 examples from yours truly, right? I used to be afraid of 3 things: snakes, needles, that is syringes, and heights. This is how I got over all 3. For snakes, I simply said, that you, snake, or snakes, live in nature. You stay there, I respect you. Once you come into my house, my yard, my abode, my territory, then you're mine. I'll kill you. I'll get rid of you some other way, right? So the way I was able to resolve that is to accept that, I did have, when I was younger, a fear of snakes. And I don't know why I had the fear of snakes, because I wasn't in contact with any snake. But this happens in life, whereby we may see things on TV often, or we may hear stories, and those things put something in our heads, right? Either way, that's how I worked out my thing with snakes. So I can go to a zoo, I can go to someone that has a snake on them, and I feel no way about it, right? Because I have a sense that, that's your territory, this is my territory, right? So it's a healthy mutual indifference. For needles, I simply boil it down to what was the source of my fear. By accepting that I were afraid of needles or syringes, I said, what is my source of fear? And I boiled down and said, look, once I get past the pinch, that's it. And so I go to the doctor, obviously, for checkups and other reasons. And so I don't go often, but when I do go and I have to draw blood or you may have to do the same, I simply reason it out as it's the pinch. And so for years, in my adult life, and like you, if you're an adult of whatever age, I'm sure you've drawn blood or you've had to take certain medications that require you to be pinched. And so I simply see it as a pinch, and it works out well for me. And finally, for heights, I reasoned that I can't fall, because I had to accept the fact that I feared falling. So my fear wasn't of heights, it was fear of falling, right? So once I accepted the fact that I feared falling, not feared heights, then I was able to resolve that I'm not going to fall. A certain confidence, certain boldness that I'm not going to fall, right? Because if I'm in a building with a, 28, 30 stories or more, or I'm on top of a large object, or let's say a mountain or a hill, I've accepted the fact that I'm not going to fall, right? Now, of course, I take precautions along the way, like any one of us would, but I have that confidence in me that I'm not going to fall, because my fear was not of heights, it was of falling. And I got to that point by accepting my fear. So the first thing is to accept your fear, to confront it. And once you do that, then guess what? At some point along my path to get to my coordinate, I had to get through what? The hurdles of snakes, needles, and heights, right? Because if I didn't, then I would not become, the person that I am, right? I would not go to certain, places. I would not go on a plane. I would not go on a roller coaster. I would not climb a hill or a mountain, right? I wouldn't do those things that was an expression of who I am as a whole complete being, moving toward that coordinate, right? That destiny that is there for me. Now, fear is necessary. We need it because it motivates us, right? It can motivate, I should say. And fear is necessary because it is that driver. It is that, driver of the bus, that makes this world move, makes this world, what it is, right? Some of us fear change. Some of us fear rejection. So whatever those fears are, they're the drivers. They're all the motivators, the movers, right, of us in this world. And oftentimes, this fear or those fears, right, end up not being motivators but being inhibitors. That is, they actually stunt or delay and even destroy us because we don't confront them. And confrontation of them requires accepting them that we are in fact afraid or have a fear or phobia of this and that. Now, I'm not saying the process of accepting and therefore confronting and therefore resolving our fears is easy, because that's why it's there, all right? Because life is supposed to be challenging. If life was easy, then we wouldn't have it. There's supposed to be obstacles. There's supposed to be judgments. Supposed to be temptations. There's supposed to be, obstacles along the way, hurdles to jump over. It's supposed to be that, right? Because that's what makes us, who we are as beings. And whenever there's a challenge in life and you say, why me? Of course it's you, because it's on your path to get to that coordinate. It had to be you, right? The people that I know who, have had very harrowing and very traumatizing experiences. And I say to them the same thing. I said, it had to be you, because only you and your destiny, in that package, in that matrix, in that code, right, that is within your being, that is your being, you had to go through those things, right, to get to that coordinate. I had to go through my fears, right, to get to my coordinate. And I'm sure there are others, challenges that are waiting there for me and waiting there for you, waiting there for us to get to there. But remember that fear is not only a driver and motivator and inhibitor, but it has to be confronted and accepted in order to be what? Resolved. And you will find your way in which you resolve it. And then on the other side of that resolve, there may be other fears awaiting you. And so fears don't end, right? Because some of us have and should have a healthy fear of losing our souls. Because what is life really about? Getting things, accumulating things, right? Using people, exploiting them. Life is more than just accumulations of things and using people to get things that you desire, or using people because you can and because you have an appetite for doing so. Life is about what is going to happen to your soul, right? When you go home, if you go home, will they let you in? Will you join those who have been resolved and reached their coordinate and point and have confronted their fears, the very obstacles and hurdles that are put in place purposely for you to live out your human experience to get back home? Will you, right, be able to take any of those things, any of those vanities, any of those attitudes, any of those behaviors with you? You won't. Your soul will be stripped naked of everything, and you will be able to have the opportunity to explain yourself, because everything we do is recorded in a book of sorts. Everything we think, do, feel is recorded. And when that book is open and you're standing in front of it and it says, you did this and that point, explain yourself. You won't have a mind, right, which is a spirit, to work your way through, to navigate, to clever your way out of it, to be cunning or to be, very skillful at what? Maneuvering your way out. In other words, lying your way out. You won't be able to, because it'll be just your soul, right? And your spirit, which is your shadow, right? That's why we have a shadow, that's your spirit. Your spirit will be another place if you have not reached that coordinate and gone through what you need to go through. Because in truth, your soul and your spirit are supposed to be one by the time you go home. And oftentimes we don't get that marriage because we haven't confronted our fears. We haven't allowed fear to motivate us rather than inhibit us, to get us through those obstacles and hurdles so we can get home in one piece. But Baba Nyame, I've been your guide and host, Grace Kanadu. And as the evening comes down, wish you all well. Apologies for the hiatus, but we'll be back on our regular schedule. Until then, drop your comments, experience in the comment section below. Until then, stay well.